Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to all the members who have joined us today. Today, we are going to look at qualitative and the quantitative side of research and discuss about the various tools, techniques, and the application of different research approaches. To give a vivid picture about the topic, qualitative research approaches and applications, we have Dr. Sai Prasad with us, who is an experienced researcher and guide. Let us have a look at his profile.
Dr. K. Sai Prasad has completed his PhD from National Law University, Jodhpur, and MPhil from Alagappa University. He is presently working as a Dean and Professor at College of Journalism, Media and Communication, Dayananda Sagar University. He has worked as Academic Dean and Professor of Marketing Communications at COMETS, Convergence Institute of Media Management and IT Studies. He has also worked as a Senior Editor at CIO India. He is an ardent researcher who has inspired students for more than 2 decades and brings along the knowledge gained from 10 years of experience working in the media industry. He believes that education is for life and not to earn a mere living, and that no learning is irrelevant. Don Bosco College welcomes you.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for this wonderful audiovisual introduction. I think,
Pleasure is ours to have you with us as a resource person.
Thank you. Thank you. I just felt heavenly listening to this, the music and all that. And then sometimes you have to just come back to the dull and boring subject research as everybody thinks it is.
I'm sure you would make it interesting, sir.
I hope to. I hope to. All right. So qualitative research is what I'm going to be presenting today. And I think by now, Professor Mary knows me and my way of how I, try and be a little different from the routine run-of-the-mill presentations. What I have done today is I have put together a presentation. There are two parts to it. One is something which is more by way of popular culture and popular research culture, and how research is all around us in so many different ways and forms, and we really think that it's different, and we focus, fortunately or unfortunately, only on academic research, which to me is a very narrow definition of research. The second part of the presentation, of course, which just continues, is the usual ways and means and methods and types of qualitative research, etc., etc. And I have added a few case studies here and there. And in this 1 hour, I'm not sure how long I will have for my presentation. What I intend to do is present for about 40 minutes, maybe 35 to 40 minutes, and then engage in a kind of discussion. And I don't want this to be an academic discussion, because I believe that every research exists solely for a purpose. We are not in science, we are in social sciences. We are not in science where we do pure research, like trying to prove that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, and then become a genius. That's not what our idea is. In social research, especially, you know, media, arts, culture, humanities, I think the challenge is to integrate academic research with practical knowledge and life situations that we encounter. And I think this is where we can make a difference as a researcher. Uh, can I share the video?
Yes, sir.
I mean, the presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is my is my presentation visible?
So,
All right. Uh, okay. So this is what I was talking to you about. Uh, the two parts to my presentation. First is a popular understanding in how qualitative research is used across sectors, knowingly or unknowingly, uh, through which I intend to give a perspective to qualitative research. The second part, I probably don't want to touch, though it is there. I can share the presentation with you all for record purposes. But it's something that you probably can pick up from any textbook, any book, and any. I mean, I'm sure everybody has gone through. Anybody who's done research, even a basic research paper has gone through all of this. So I'm not really looking at this. Uh, if I may, I can use this platform to say that tongue in cheek, that qualitative research is probably uh, better in terms of understanding, knowledge sharing, knowledge development, and gaining insights than quantitative research. This is not to put down quantitative research, because I feel if we are able to successfully and effectively combine the two, then our research becomes more meaningful. Because the focus here, when we talk of research, like I said, is on human beings, people who consume knowledge, people who give out knowledge, people who understand each other, empathy and other things which we so often talk about. And gaining insights, again, gaining insights about whom? About people. So research primarily, especially qualitative research, is about dealing with human beings, is about dealing with people, is about gaining insights and understanding. Right? In pure research terms, it is about understanding the quality of a variable, something that a number is not going to say. A number is not definitely going to give the quality of or the value that it possesses. Okay, so two basic principles. People who have done psychology will definitely agree with me and understand this. One is perspective, and the other is perception. These are two very essential things, uh, of human behavior. One is a viewpoint or a relative viewpoint, how we look at things. The second is perception, how we understand and interpret things. These two, the reason why I'm saying these two are important in research is because the same numbers, the same data can be interpreted in two different ways. And as researchers, all of us know that uh, two different conclusions are drawn from the same set of numbers. And which is why I said qualitative research is a value add in a sort of way to quantitative research. Okay, some very basic things, which is probably the most fundamental uh, class in research methodology. Who is a good researcher? And all of us have answers. We have probably put all this out, etc., etc. And if you look at this, it tells you all of this or none of this can be quantified. So fundamentally, we are looking at a process which is more human driven, which is more intuitive, which is more about communication, which is more about interpretation, which is more about connecting the variables in our own mind, in our own thought processes. We have a term called hypothesis, which is so essential, whether it is quantitative or qualitative research. What is hypothesis? It's nothing but an assumption. My professor, when I did my research, my professor said, in research, you never assume. And then he would, break that word down, ASSUME. And then he would say, see, when you assume anything, you're making an ass of you as well as me. So never assume anything. And I think that is the fundamental principle on which research itself lives. Never assume. But most of the qualities that a good researcher needs are qualities. Qualitative, that itself defines qualitative. Right? So what's the best way of doing research? Is it just quantitative? Collecting plenty of data, analyzing the data, process the data, feed it into SPSS or any other softwares that you know today, put it in, and then out comes your uh, information. Today, you don't even have to go that far. You just need to type one word in Google, and AI gives you anything that you need. Okay? And that, incidentally, is the topic for today's discussion too. Now, when you talk of data, we are talking of two things essential to research, which is one is relevance of data, and the second is accuracy of data. I think these two are important for us to draw impactful conclusions, which means interpreting the data is key to our research. Right? Age is a number. If you say 20 years old, somebody would correct you and say, sorry, I'm 20 years young. If you go to, if I tell my grandfather you're 80 years old, he'll look at me and say, young man, you think I'm old. I'm 80 years young. I'm young at heart. So number itself there becomes relative in life. Right? And I think that is what defines, and that is what the beauty of research is. It allows us to interpret data in a way that is more meaningful and more impactful. Right? And this is something that can be done only in social sciences. You cannot do it in mathematics or pure science. You cannot go to a mathematician and say, I think 2 + 2 is 5. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, he will say, yes, you are wrong. And there is nothing we can do about it. 2 + 2 has to be 4, and that's what even AI says, right? Since we depend on AI for everything. But in social research, in social sciences, we can interpret the data to make it more impactful, to make it more meaningful, and for a larger common good and cause of society. Yeah. Let me give you a couple of examples. What I'm going to do is take you through a few examples. Some of them are very relevant. Some of them are cases we have gone through, and we understand what I'm going to say now. We understand the importance of this interpretation. Okay. Look at all these examples. And these are exactly the terms we use. The law is not absolute. There is something called the spirit of the law and the word of the law. In letter and spirit is what they say, which means the law intends to convey something. The law actually says something, if you look at the books. So judges interpret a law in a court, which is why you have multiple court verdicts. Somebody says, you're right, and then somebody says, no, given bail, and somebody says, no, there is no evidence. So this is, again, a case of interpretation. And how do judges interpret? Judges interpret based on the data available to them. Journalists interpret an activity and present it. So next day, when you open 3 different newspapers, you find 3 different headlines, 3 different reports, 3 different articles, all about the same thing. In one of them, it says probably, since I have a media background, I always find it very funny that how one incident can be interpreted in 3 different ways. Consumers interpret a message in advertising. Somebody protests against it. Somebody says, wow, fantastic, lovely. It goes on to win a Cannes Lion award. because it's great advertising. And then somebody says, no, this is so controversial. How did they even think of putting it? Auditors interpret their accounting rules depending on who the clients are. If you and I go, they'll say you have to pay the tax. If an HNI, a high net worth individual goes, they'll tell them how to avoid paying the tax. Right? Scientists interpret the outcomes of experiments. And the biggest example was COVID. When somebody said the vaccine works only 60%, somebody came and said, be thankful, it works at least 60%. So here you have two different ways of interpreting the same data. Managers interpret statistical data for decision making. Should I or should I not? What if there's a 50% chance something works? Right? Voters interpret policies. So you see, interpretation is what drives research. Right? Mixed research. Obviously, we cannot have qualitative data in isolation. We cannot have quantitative research in isolation. Life is mixed. Everything is mixed. Today we have intercaste marriages. So they say mixed race. Today when migrants from this, migrants go to Europe, like the movie Donkey, they say, we don't want them here. Why? Because they say, no, when they come, they mix with us. It becomes a mixed race then. So this whole concept of mixing something is very fundamental in nature. And it's no wonder that even in research, if you have to really get meaningful outcomes and meaningful draw meaningful conclusions, you have to have mixed research. You cannot just sit with numbers and say, well, I have all the numbers, and then there is no conclusion. There's no interpretation. Every PhD report has a conclusion, interpretation, etc. Where you have to interpret the numbers and tell the audience, what those numbers mean, or use multiple tools. As much as you would want to carry out a survey, which is probably quantitative, where people mark responses. You have a Likert scale, you have, so on and so forth. They mark responses. You also compact it, open all the responses, feed them through softwares, get the output, and then break your head and say, what the hell are they trying to mean? Why has someone said 3? Why couldn't you have said 4 or 5? My average is falling because of 3, which means it's neutral. If 1 is bad and 5 is good, or 5 is excellent, and someone says 3, there is a concept in research called the bored researcher or the bored respondent. A bored researcher is one who keeps everything short and simple because he doesn't want to, do too much of data collation and data analysis. A bored respondent is one who neither puts 1 nor 5. He puts 3 everywhere. Because, I don't know, I really can't make up my mind. I'll either say, if I say 1, then they'll ask me, why have I said 1? If I say 3, nobody's going to ask me. So he's a bored respondent. So now you have responses, data, numerical responses, and you want to make sense of it. So you call this guy who has put 3 everywhere and say, boss, tell me, why have you put 3 everywhere? And that's when he realizes, actually, I put 3 everywhere. So you're supposed to find out why. Because if you don't find out why, the data or the numbers make no sense. Your data is going to be wrong. It's going to be erroneous. Right? I have copied and pasted an article here. Maybe somebody can take a screenshot and open it in their browsers. Now, this article I found today on NDTV. Like I said, I'm a media person, so even my examples are going to be skewed to the media, and I hope the others will not have a problem with it. But that's easy to understand because that's what we're consuming every day. And that's an easy way of understanding research too. Here is an article which talks about how the BJP may or may not get 400 plus seats with a 50% vote share. Now, just the title of this article, there's something very funny about it. How many seats are there in the Indian Parliament? 543. Mary ma'am, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And 543 in the Lok Sabha. I'm not taking the Rajya Sabha because that is not really elected. If out of 543 seats, the BJP has to win 400 again, this is to tell you why mixed research is important. What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses, etc. Now, the point is, when we talk of interpretation, and when we say interpretation is relative, here is an example given by, like I said, I take most of my examples from the media. So here is an example which has been carried by no less than BBC, which is supposed to be one of the best media outlets in the world. You're able to read the numbers and you're able to see the charts. I hope you're able to see the charts.
Yes, sir.
All right. So now, if you look, can anyone tell me what is the difference between these two charts? Can anyone tell me what's the difference between these two charts? Which one is scarier and which one is a lot more easy and a lot more hopeful and positive when it comes to the number of deaths, coronavirus deaths? Can anyone tell me? I mean, is the audience allowed to interact?
They can post in the chat, sir.
They can post in the chat. So I have to share, I have to see if someone has posted. Okay. No one has posted. Size of sample. Someone has posted size of sample. Okay. Please look at it very carefully.
Both the same, sir, but except for the interval and the x-axis here.
Absolutely. So you see, what happened was, the story goes thus, that when BBC put out this data, the first one on the left, death rate varies by age, health, and sex. Case fatality ratio. And it's at 14.8%. But look at the interval they've given, only up to 15%. So the common man, when he reads something like this in a newspaper and he sees long charts and long infographics and numbers, it's scary. And people are already scared of coronavirus. And when BBC put this out, people said, my goodness, this is terrible. Right? Till such time, some reader pointed out that the interval stops at 15%. So he forced BBC. He must. I'm sure he's an intelligent reader who's probably done a course in research methodology. So BBC had to go back, rework on its infographics, and then present it on an interval of 100%. Now the numbers and the graphs and the all the pie charts and the bar charts, everything started looking smaller. And then people said, oh, it's not so scary after all. 4 people out of 100 died. Right? It's okay. That's 4%. Whereas the same, percentage, 10.5, and it shows out of 15, the bar looks so long. Visually, when we consume information, we don't really read the fine print. We look at the visual representation of information, knowledge, data, whatever you may call it, and then consume it. Because today we don't have the time to really process too much of information. This was an example of how interpretation is relative. People were scared when they saw the first one. People were they were easy when they saw the second one. They were no longer scared. Right? Let me give you a couple of more. Look at this example. COVID-19 outbreak. How does India compare? Approximate cases per lakh population. India is down, right down there. But this was very, very early, 2020. Right? Now, if you look at this, India is probably not even affected by COVID. You don't really have to worry. Why? Because it's just less than a lakh. and just 7 cases per lakh of population out of 1.4 billion. That's that's probably a number that uh, one small area in Bangalore has as registered voters. Maybe Whitefield has 96,000 registered voters. And we're talking of India. So why lockdown? Why do we even have to worry about? On the other hand, look at USA. On the other hand, look at all these countries and see, because in comparison to their total population, the numbers were huge. But what was the narrative that was given in the media or generally everywhere? India is suffering because of COVID, right? Now, you may look at this and say, if this is what the interpretation is, and we really didn't have worry about, so was there a need for a lockdown? Was there a need for all the things that we did during those times? These are questions we can ask, right? Because from going by the numbers, or look at this number of deaths. Right? In fact, I remember there was an article written by uh, Dr. Devi Shetty during one of those COVID days, where he said, see, the real methodology to calculate COVID, incidence of COVID or spread of COVID, is to not look at the total cases, but he said is to look at the total number of people who have recovered. Because when you look at the total number of cases that are affected, everybody, all of us have cold, cough, all of us were affected in some way or the other. But look at the number of people who have recovered. That's far higher than any other country. India has a far higher percentage of people who have recovered than any other country. And that is a very positive sign. So, from a doctor's perspective, remember we spoke about perspective and uh, perception. From a doctor's perspective, he actually questioned the methodology of calculating, uh, you know, the number of cases of COVID, etc., etc. And he said, why are we even doing this? So, okay, before I come to so the point I'm trying to make is interpretation plays a very big role. And this is where I think qualitative research helps because it helps us to understand the context, it helps us to understand the relative importance of numbers, right? Okay, the next couple of slides, I would like you all to read something. It's very interesting. I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to read this, but please read this and we will then take Q&A. I think somebody has posted a question. Is any method available for sampling procedure? Uh, what does that mean? Okay, I'll take the questions later on. Okay, please read. This is a very interesting case, and I'm going to actually ask you a few questions because this was presented by uh, you know Don Harper Mills, who was the president of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. And it's a very important, very not only important, but also a very interesting case. Okay, please read this. And once you're done, let me know and I'll move to the next slide. Can I move to the next slide?
We can go to the next slide, sir.
Can I go to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
Can I go to the next one?
Yes, sir.
Now the anticlimax, right? Is this Don Harper Mills made the story up, which no one could detect, because he made the story up and he said, one of the things that people do in the West is sometimes they just don't like to be called researchers. They like to be called investigators. That they like to investigate anything. So research and investigation are one and the same. You're trying to figure out maybe in a little more organized way and maybe a little more official way, as we understand investigation in India. Definitely not the ED investigation, but generally everything else. So what he did was he actually told the story to the audience. If I had narrated the story, probably many of you wouldn't have understood it. That's why I thought it's better to read it. And he said that with every variable, a new variable that's introduced in the story, the outcome changes. Outcome keeps fluctuating, it keeps changing. Right? We do hypothesis testing. Why do we do hypothesis testing? Not to prove it, either to prove it or disprove it. Either accept the hypothesis or reject it. Right? So, you see, this story underscored the importance of data. And his logic, his argument was data always keeps changing. Data is dynamic. Data never is never fixed. Right? And he relied more on intuition, knowledge, experience, etc. And that is exactly what you find today when we try and consume some information, right? We rely first on our own intuition, experience, and knowledge. Okay, here is another case, much closer home. I'm sure all of you know about this case. All of us know about this case. And there's a nice movie that came, Talwar. Now, here is again a classic example of everybody knew what happened, but no one knew how it happened. Everybody knew what happened. The press wrote about it. Television recreated the scenes. Everybody knew what happened, but no one really knew how it happened. Right? The final verdict literally is yet to be out, in the sense, though they've been sentenced to life imprisonment and all that, no one really knows what happened. Under such circumstances, and this is exactly what we are dealing with in research, right? We are just assuming that something is likely to happen or something, or the outcome will be something else, and then start doing our research. I always give the example to my students, of course, that Sherlock Holmes should be the ideal researcher to all of you. And then the students would be very happy because they read Sherlock Holmes, they watch his movies and all of that. And then I tell them, and if we read his stories or we watch the movies carefully, we always see the power of logical reasoning. It is intuition plus logical reasoning, right? And relying on evidence. Now, look at the mixed research component in this. It's relying on evidence, which is quantitative, logical reasoning, logical deduction through numbers, through occurrences, events, etc. But he starts off with intuition and observation. So you have two different methodologies which come together here, right? Again, Alfred Hitchcock. And I personally used to show these two movies to my students. And some of you can probably go back and watch it, and then you'll understand what I'm saying. The movie Rear Window is the story of a journalist who's, incapacitated. So he has to spend the next 10 or 15 days on bed. So he gets very bored and he actually he pulls his bed and sits and starts looking out of the window. And he's only observing things happening around him. And he actually unravels a murder mystery. The power of observation. And that's a very, very important tool in qualitative research. There are so many other tools. Even if you take, ethnographic studies, or even if you take, say, focus group, and you take anything else, the primary and the most fundamental tool that you employ is the power of observation. We all see, we don't observe. We all look at things. We really don't internalize the meanings. Similarly, there's another movie, Rope, where a murder mystery is solved simply by asking questions, right? By asking questions repeatedly. How many of us ask questions in a pointed way? How many of us ask questions in a very insightful way? How many of us, we frame question as, but do we really check if the question is, or the questions presented are insightful or not, right? There's a very, there's another exciting way in which we can carry out qualitative research or use it as a starting point for qualitative research, and that is mind mapping. I don't know if mind mapping is even taught under research, but we do workshops on mind mapping, and it's a very powerful tool. Because the logic here is very simple. If we as researchers cannot understand what we are researching and why we are researching, it reflects in everything that we do. The questionnaires that we create, or the case studies that we take, or the questions we put out, or the interviews that we conduct, the confusion comes up. So mind mapping is a very powerful research tool. And I think that is something that as qualitative researchers we can employ. Again, I'm really not going to explain all this. Is qualitative research difficult? Well, it's not really difficult. It becomes a tad difficult because you don't have numbers to fall back on. Whenever you're in confusion, you look at a number and say, okay, the numbers say this, which is why my conclusion was this. But in qualitative research, it's all about your understanding. So in that context, in that sense, I think outcomes differ. So it becomes a little difficult to explain because then it becomes your explanation and your interpretation versus someone else's. Uh, Okay, I'm just skipping all this because I think we are really running out of time. Some of the frequently applied areas of qualitative research, journalism, definitely, because you see day in and day out, you see interviews happening. You see uh, people trying to get answers for every question. Psephology, yes, very, very big area today, especially with elections around the corner. You see a lot of people using number crunching along with understanding the electorate, right? So they do both number crunching, data, hard data, and meeting the electorate, having town halls, having focus group, and trying to understand the needs and wants of electorates. Marketing research, consumer behavior, consumer analysis, media viewership analysis, a whole host of areas where qualitative research is more meaningful and impactful. Quickly, a couple of slides about how research is used in the media and why uh, qualitative research is important. Why do we like reality shows? Like, very difficult question to answer. Why are we not reading the news, but we just want the alerts? None of us really read news fully. We just want only the alert. We just want to know what happened without really trying to understand. All of this points to our own deficiencies as researchers. Because if you're not picking up the newspaper and reading an article fully, then you're missing out on so many points, right? Binge watching, we love to watch so many things. Uh, Again, numbers. And why do people do this? Social media, ubiquitous. It's all about emotions, emoticons. Analytics does not talk about emotions, right? So we talk about social media analytics, we still don't know why people say like to something. Okay, they click the like button. It's very difficult to interpret. So social media is still a nascent area where we can do a lot of things. Again, we like serials, we are curious. So, there are a lot of ways in which we use uh, qualitative research techniques all around us without really understanding why we are using them or in what way are they meaningful and impactful. But we are all the time using this. Artificial intelligence and QR. Artificial intelligence is a deadly combination of two very different things. One is something that's artificial, which is not natural, and two, that is intelligence, which has the potential to disrupt so many things, right? And that's exactly what we see happening. In fact, the other day I was reading a news item where there was a news channel which I think was trying to replace an anchor with a robot. That's like loss of jobs. So people protested and said, my goodness, if this is what is going to happen, then where will we get jobs? Right? But yes, AI has its own uses, limited though at the moment. And in fact, the creators of AI themselves have said that if AI is not tamed, humanity is going to be in serious trouble because it becomes a force that you really cannot control, right? We already know about deep fakes, the dark net, and a lot of things over which we have absolutely no control. And I'm not even sure if there are research happening in these areas because we don't know what to research. But yes, there are benefits of AI in research when it comes to information extraction, when you do secondary data research, literature survey, translation, speech recognition, when you're recording something and you're trying to, you know, uh, transcribe it. In a lot of ways, AI has today simplified data collection methods. It has simplified data analysis methods. It has its uses. Let's put it that way. Benefits of AI. It's time saving, probably improved accuracy. I will not say 100%, but probably because it helps in reducing human error. But let's not forget that AI is also human induced, which means it's garbage in, garbage out. Whatever we have fed into AI, AI is going to throw us back at us. Right? Enhanced insight, scalability, just like any software, it is scalable. And of course, it allows interdisciplinary collaboration, which probably will be very helpful and useful to us in the long run. Right? Uh, this should probably explain how AI is used and how we can use it in our research, especially in qualitative research. Now, I think we are running out of time, Mary ma'am, because the next thing is the qualitative research methods and all of this, which is very theoretical. Now, I really, I'm not very, you know, what is a good technique, what are the interview methods, things like that, which I think are more for the sake of completion. So I could share this with you and you can share it with all the participants should they need some information on this. But I think this is something that everybody would have known by now, right? My whole idea was to present a very different picture of qualitative research, about how it is all pervasive and how we use it knowingly or unknowingly. And the more we read about what's happening around us, especially because we are talking of uh, social sciences, and that's all of us and our behaviors and our situations every day. The more we read, the more we realize how research is used, right? And it probably helps us to make our own research a little more meaningful and a little more impactful. Right? Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take maybe a couple of questions because I think we have about 5 to 10 minutes. Let me, before that, answer the question which somebody had posted. Okay, I think one of the questions was, is any method available for sampling procedure? Now, what is sampling procedure? Are you trying to ask, are there any methods available for sampling in qualitative research? Divya Prabha has asked. So I'm assuming that what she wants to know is, are there any sampling techniques specifically when you do things like interviewing or observation or any of these techniques, right? So here is my response. You will not be able to have 100% accurate sampling in the sense, this is not a or random sampling or any of those technically correct sampling methods. What you would probably have to keep in mind is the people that you choose as subjects for either your interview or for your focus group or for your any other technique should come as close as possible to what you have in mind as a researcher, the problem or the possible solutions or the research topic itself. There is an inherent bias in this, but that's inevitable in qualitative research. The second question is, please explain how to validate the questionnaire. Now, questionnaire is typically, something that you use in quantitative research because if you're going to give if you're going to give options and then choose one, two, three, if it's numerical. But if you are seeing how to design a questionnaire for an interview, for example, many times when you interview celebrities or when you interview people, even CEOs and others, and you want to ask them questions, what they would say is, because it becomes difficult for them to think at that point, and also because they don't want to lose out on information, they would probably tell you, please send the questionnaire to me. Now, this questionnaire is again qualitative questionnaire without numbers. It's not a very ideal thing to send the questions to them because what then happens is you're restricting the responses and you're actually diluting the entire process of an interview, which is why I'm not really in favor of sending a questionnaire on email and getting a response. It defeats the purpose of an interview because in interview, what happens is when you ask questions, you're not just asking questions, you're actually observing the person. So you're actually mixing two techniques, right? And when the person gives you the answer, when the person is replying to your questions, somewhere it triggers off another question in you, which probably you have not put down in your earlier question. And that could lead to more insights. So the entire discussion or conversation becomes more insightful. I hope that answers your question. Can you see a sample of questionnaire for qualitative research? Its numbers won't be there. Any question? I can straight away put on 5 questions to you. One, what is your specialization? what subjects do you teach, what kind of teaching methodologies do you employ, what has been the response from the students to your teaching methodologies, what kind of improvements have you done in your teaching. I've just given you 6 questions. There are no fixed responses. These are open-ended questions where the response depends entirely on your own experience. Right? Now, based on the response, I can either ask you for more clarification, or I can say, okay, I've got what I wanted. If I have any clarifications, I'll come back to you. I'll probably use this to make an assessment of what kind of a subject you are and what kind of a teaching, what kind of a teacher you are, and then form my own opinion. Now, I have the choice of stopping my interview here, taking whatever you've given, which will be very limited, and form an assessment. And that's how many times assessments go wrong, because we really don't go beyond and try and ask questions to gain insights. We just ask questions to gather information. That's where the difference is. Open-ended and based on response, we have to interpret. Right. As we speak, as I speak, and as you listen to me, you are putting down the questions. And that's the advantage you have in an interview. So if you consider this as an interview and you want to ask me the questions, you're free to type the questions and I keep answering them one by one. Now, some of these responses could be overlapping with my previous responses. What happens is, it's one way to look at it as repetitive, but it's another way to see if it makes sense or if it's more insightful, or if I'm stressing on a particular aspect, right? Because if I want to stress on a particular aspect, then what I do is I'm repeating that. But sir, then interpretation will vary from me and the respondent. Absolutely. That's why I said in the beginning, it's your understanding of the respondent. And that is exactly why qualitative research is both an advantage and a disadvantage. It's an advantage because you're open to interpretation. You're open to interpreting the response in the way you want it, or based on your own characteristics, your own culture, your own context, your own research problems, and your own mindset. Right? But it becomes a problem because two different people will interpret it in two different ways, and then you won't know which one to take. Right? And then there is a conflict. And I always say a conflict arises when both the parties are correct, because each one is looking at it from a different perspective. Then how to prove a hypothesis? You can prove the hypothesis based on your understanding, which is why in any PhD thesis, when you submit it in the end in the report, you always give a chapter on limitations of the study. And when you put down the limitations, you're making it very clear, boss, this is not the final version. This is not a perfect study. What you're trying to say is, it's like cooking a meal and saying, I just had 15 minutes and I could just make whatever dish I could, and that's all it can taste. If I have 2 hours, I'll cook elaborately, right? And make it the best dish. But even there, somebody is going to come and say, oh my God, you know what? This is not really as tasty as what it was when you did last time. So there is a difference even there. So there's nothing like a perfect hypothesis, or there's nothing like a perfect way to prove or not disprove a hypothesis. Or there's nothing like a perfect conclusion in research. That's the point I'm trying to make through qualitative research. And that's the beauty of qualitative research. You're open to interpreting it. You prove or you don't prove a hypothesis. Then somebody else comes and says, can I prove this hypothesis? Yeah. The methodology is probably going to be a little different. Right? Yeah. See, I
So,
mean, I think we just touched upon a few things. I just tried to make it as exciting and interesting as possible. I didn't want to really go into the theory of research, because I think people have been listening to it and then it's going to really get to them.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful examples and for making it as lively as possible. We have one question.
Sure.
The question is, how do we go about hypothesis testing when we do not directly have dependent variables?
Okay. Can you give me an example? Or if it was something from your own experience or you came across something, can you just give me an example?
It was from one of the participants. I'll have to pass.
Oh, is it? Okay. Oh, I didn't see the question. Okay, I didn't see it.
No, we had a group, so it came in the group.
Okay, now what is a dependent variable and what is an independent variable? What is a dependent variable? A variable that depends on certain outcomes, certain behavior, certain patterns, certain things happening. It's dependent on that. So, if I were to take a very psychology, sociology uh, example, we all get inputs and our responses differ, right? You can if you say things like anger or say if anger is a response, it would depend on the input that we have got. Now, what does it take for us to prove whether a particular response, a particular outcome is going to fetch a response or not? No, that is what we do even in hypothesis testing. We assume something, we assume a dependent variable, we assume an independent variable, we assume that this is what is likely to happen or this is what may happen, may not happen. And then we are trying to prove it. Right? When there is no dependent variable, like you say, when there is no dependent variable, when there is no variable that is dependent on anything, then what will that be? And how will we prove it? What is there to be proved there? Either there is a variable that you have to prove has an impact, right? Or you say this is the outcome and leave it at that. Sometimes what happens is when we are unable to prove it, we resort to getting some numbers associated with it. How many? What is the correlation? Because you get a correlation coefficient, then you get a number there which says, see, the relationship is very weak or very strong. Sometimes you have to rely on numbers to prove or disprove something. Sometimes. But then it would also tell us how we define our hypothesis. Are we dependent on those variables without which the study becomes meaningless? Or are we going to have multiple hypotheses, all of which sometimes you have 4, 5, 6, 3, whatever number, which is going to prove that in a majority of cases, I see a relationship. Somewhere I don't see a relationship. Then what happens? Which is that case where I don't find a relationship. Take only that and analyze it and to say why there was no relationship. Or if there is a relationship seen only in one, or you're able to prove only one hypothesis. Then take only that and see why you were able to prove only then where everything else, you were unable to test the hypothesis positively. I mean, see, these are things which probably become clear if you're actually doing something and then come across a very specific problem. And then we try and see what is the best way to solve that problem.
Thank you, sir. I think that answered the question, and thank you for the wonderful session. I would now like to invite Professor Maria to propose the vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude today's insightful session on qualitative research approaches and applications, it is with great appreciation that I extend our collective gratitude to Dr. Sai Prasad. Sir, your comprehensive overview of qualitative research methodology and their practical applications in the modern context of AI has not only enlightened us, but also provided us with practical tools to enhance our research strides. On behalf of Don Bosco College and all the participants, I express our profound thanks for your contributions. Your dedication to academic excellence and your commitment to sharing your knowledge are deeply appreciated. Thank you, sir. Research is not complete without exploring both of its integral aspects, qualitative and quantitative. Each offers unique insights and methodologies essential for a comprehensive understanding. Today, we are privileged to have Dr. Prakash with us, who will shed light on the tools and techniques for quantitative research. Let us now look at his profile.
Dr. Prakash GS is an associate professor at School of Education and member of Teaching Learning Enhancement Cell Christ University, Bangalore. He has 20 years of teaching and research experience in education. He completed his Masters in Education from RIE Mysore, PhD from Bangalore University. He has also completed MSc in Chemistry and MPhil in Education. He is a certified IB educator in MYP and DP from DePaul University, Chicago. He has published research articles in peer-reviewed journals, indexed in Scopus and Web of Science. He has conducted quantitative data analysis workshops and delivers lectures on research and publication. He has presented papers in national and international conferences at Bangkok, Switzerland, and Russia. He is an active editorial board member for Sage, Open, Springer Nature, Taylor and Francis, and IGI Global. His research interest areas are teacher education, educational technology, teaching learning assessment evaluation, and higher education. Don Bosco College welcomes you.
Over to you, sir. So I think it's muted.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful video introduction of mine. And respected Father Yesudas and Dr. Shahjan Norana and Dr. Mary Binu and Miss Maria Nirmala, as I see as panelists here. I'm glad to take part in this a wonderful faculty development program organized by Don Bosco College. And thank you very much for inviting me for this as a panel. So I think I'll straight away begin my presentation. Let me share the screen. Yeah. So is my screen visible?
The screen is visible, sir. The PPT is yet to.
Yeah. Now the PPT is visible?
Sir.
Yeah. Fine, I've selected a full screen share because I may browse half this PPT. Therefore, I have selected the screen view for this presentation. Anyway, I will be on this slideshow and then I will get back to the other windows soon. Yes, as I said, it's very interesting. I saw the other speakers on the brochure and really glad to be part of it. So to begin with, this is the title I have: Quantitative Research Methods, Tools and Techniques. Then I was wondering, should I talk about research design or research methods, tools and techniques, because it's too huge to talk within an hour, but I'll try my best to give a glimpse of or what I think you can take home as a part of learning. So let me begin with what is quantitative research method. A simple definition. I know you all are already professors in the institute, so you will be already knowing it. But however, just to recollect or refresh, quantitative research methods, and you heard so far about the qualitative research, and which is more of non-numerical data. But when it comes to quantitative, we differentiate it from qualitative by looking at its quantitative data, that is numerical mostly. So we record the events and any group of individuals or any phenomena around us, and quantify them in terms of numbers. And that's how it becomes qualitative research method. And the data can vary from very small sample to a very huge sample. Sometimes major research projects that we do in the universities can run to a data up to 10,000 participants, 5,000, 1,000, 300, and usually master's dissertation and PhD thesis 300, 200, and so on. So all these are survey data. For quantitative research we mostly be using. However, sometimes when you talk about quantitative research methods, we can say it talks about the relationship between the variables on and how a particular continuous or categorical variable behave in a particular situation or context. And we might use questionnaires, structured observations, and experimental designs, and so on. So just giving you the idea of what is quantitative research methods means. Of course, specific methods are many, but the main difference between the quali to quanti is to have the numbers in place while you observe any phenomena. Okay, so moving forward, we look at qualitative research as these two types. One is who conducts this research, and then what type of data is collected. Okay, so when we look at who conducts the research, then the quantitative research will be divided into two groups: primary research and secondary research. Now, okay, what is primary research? If the researcher is in contact with the participant, direct contact, that means you visit the school, you visit the university, you visit the college, teachers, or even social groups outside in the society, or a company employee, whoever it is. As a researcher, you visit or you administer a questionnaire to collect data, any kind of checklist or anything. You try to collect data by visiting to them or seeing them face to face, or sometimes these days, with the advent of AI and lot many Google apps, we see even administering it in an electronic mode. However, still that's a primary research because you have taken some consent or agreement before they answer your Google form or SurveyMonkey or whatever tool you use, right? So therefore, that's a primary research. But when we look at, okay, it's conducted not primarily from the researcher, but researcher studies available document, available book, available literature, and then takes down data from that or downloads data from that and try to make some hypotheses and connections and try to arrive at some solutions to the problems that you had planned for. Then that becomes secondary research. So it is the type of research under quantitative now could be categorized as primary or secondary, depending on the type of data that you're getting in and who is involved in doing it. So if a researcher is involved in collecting the data straight from the field, face to face, or any other mode that I mentioned, then it's a primary research. If it's coming from a literature book, then it's kind of a secondary research. Okay, this is one way of classifying the quantitative research. Then another type would be the way you collect data. Okay, as I told you, is the number, the frequency you collect from the field. Now, like for example, if it's in education, the number of primary school teachers in Karnataka or in India, you wanted to know, and you get the number, right? So, or you are collecting, you are in administering a mathematics achievement test score or mathematics achievement test to a set of students. Then you collect them, you collect the responses onto the test, and then you evaluate, and then you get the data, numerical data, total score for an achievement test. Then you tabulate them. Then that becomes a quantitative data. However, if it is not numerical, it's mostly the interview or focus group techniques that you use by by interviewing them or conducting a semi-structured interview or doing an observation, and you don't get any frequency, but you need to write down the script. You may conduct an online interview. You may conduct I think last hour you already learned what's qualitative research, so I'm not going to speak much about that, even though I'm a mixed method practitioner. But then, yeah, that's qualitative, where numerical data is not in place, but yet you have software called InVivo and Deduce and MaxQD and many other data analysis software. We use it for qualitative research, but yet it is not doing anything numerical, but it will go by the codes and the words and the text. Anyway, I leave it at that for qualitative research, but now quantitative data is something which is numerical, and you can collect anything and everything, right? So we speak with specific examples, or when you give some questions, we will take some examples and discuss how it's quantitative. So I guess you understood the different types of quantitative research. One is based on the data, primary research, secondary research, and another one is, if it's numerical, then it's quantitative. If it is non-numerical, it's qualitative. So these are different methods when we look at types of research. Now, straight coming on to the data collection methods, like I already mentioned to you, if it's primary, these are the very quite common data collection methods people use, right? Okay, tools or methods you can use. For example, survey. You frame the questionnaire, or you adopt a questionnaire, or you use a questionnaire which is readily available, or a scale, or an inventory, or a checklist. There are so many types of it. If that is readily available, you can borrow them or buy them, or from the author request and take it, right? And you can adapt. If it depends on the copyright again, you can adapt, and if the author says okay, you can modify it, then you can modify, right? So all that comes under survey questionnaire. And survey is usually a big data we go for. We collect usually the student dissertations or master's thesis, go up to 300 to 500 data, 1,000 data. But when it comes to major research project, we go much beyond that, maybe 5,000, 10,000, etc. So that's how it becomes survey, because it's a huge data. Okay. And even in quantitative, we can do an interview and collect data. It's not necessarily only for qualitative we use interview. How is this interview will be? It's a structured interview wherein you will ask, you may call a participant and ask, what's your gender, and you note down the demographic details, what's your age, and then what do you say on a 5-point rating scale? If I say this statement, do you strongly agree? Yes. Then you put a tick mark, and you can collect data straight from the phone call or straight on the Google Meet, any of the online platforms, video conferencing platforms like the one we are using, Zoom now, right? So that's interview quantitative data. Okay, quantitative data coming from interviews. Okay, then similarly through observation. What is this observation? Again, you can, for observation, usually in quantitative research, we use a checklist, like we observe so and so was doing some characteristics you can observe, or any phenomenon that you have planned for, or you have listed the itinerary. These are the things I wanted to observe, and number of times it occurs. Sometimes you note down the frequencies of that particular event happening. Then it's all about observation. Again, I'm sure the previous speaker must have spoke about participant and non-participant observation, and it still holds good here as well, because by being a participant, what are the things you note down numerically? But we do it numerically here because it's a quantitative research. And being non-participant observation, maybe from far distance, or even on the web page, or on the institutes, or on people you can have a checklist and do certain observations and note down the numerical quantity, whatever the way you have defined it, what index you wanted to give for a particular observation you are making. So that's all about the observation and doing collecting data. And experimental designs we have, and there are several experimental design. I'm going to talk about that in the upcoming slides. We collect data, and that's again a primary data, because I told you in primary research, the researcher himself is involved in collecting the data. You conduct an experiment, you have a control group, you have an experimental group. Experimenter is providing an intervention, you give a pre-test, you give a post-test, collect data, find out the differences, you may do a delayed post-test, and so on. So all these interview, survey, questionnaire, observation, experiment, where the researcher himself is directly involved or coming under data collection methods of primary research. Okay, so now let's look at what is secondary research. I mean, that I already told you, but then what are the tools that you can use for collecting data? One is obviously literature review. And where do you collect the literature review from? Anybody wants to respond? Where do you look for literature review? You look at any particular website, or you just Google it, or you just go to a library and do it manually? May I get some response? Anybody would like to answer? Where do you look for a literature review? Let me check the chat. You can also put it on the chat. Did you get my question? Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, there are two responses. Thank you, Stephen. I think he writes Google Scholar, and then somebody writes, Internet Google Scholar, then Litmap. Somebody writes Litmap. Yeah, most of you writes Google Scholar. Great. Shodh Ganga, yes. Rinki writes Shodh Ganga, that's right. That's from the government. Yeah, that's good. InflipNet or Shodh Ganga. Any other response? Yeah, people are going with Shodh Ganga and Google Scholar, very famous one. Any other response? ResearchGate. Kushbu says ResearchGate. Okay, fine. Thank you. Yeah. That's fine. Anyway, I now know to whom I'm dealing with. Hey, ResearchGate and academia, for your information, are just like your Facebook. It's just a social media, and the researcher, after publishing it elsewhere on the journal website, they're just downloading and uploading here without having understood the copyright issues or copyrights of what they published and where they published. And I suggest you, it's not just about Google Scholar or ResearchGate or Shodh Ganga. Please explore the sites called BASE, BASE. Okay, let me, if possible, I'll browse and show you here. Let me escape from the slideshow. Is my other tabs visible?
Yes, it's visible now.
Yeah, thank you. You can just base search engine, you can go for. Yeah, this one. You can explore this. Okay. For instance, if I have to go, I'm just clicking it here. You can also go for core, core search engine you should put. Okay, you can go it here. Then I'll show you. I just showed you two. And like that, you need to go for specific search, not necessarily Google Scholar alone. Okay, let me show you. This is base. You can see here, search. You see the number here, it's in crores. Documents from 11,405 content providers. This is where you get your reviews. From Germany, this is from Bielefeld Academic Search Engine. Please explore here, not just Google or Google Scholar. And then core, yeah, let me show you. I think it's, sorry. Yeah, you can see here, this is core, the world's largest collection of open access research papers. You browse any term here, you get it. Okay, you browse at your free time. And right now, we do not have time for all of this. However, I'm just showing you from literature review, you need data for secondary research, quantitative, you search literature review there. And also, I will show you a few other sources where you can look for. Government database. As anyone know? Yeah, let me check the chat again. Anybody knows what is any government database that you have ever heard or have you ever seen? Yeah, somebody writes science direct for other question. Kayal. Yes, any idea about the government database? Have you heard? No? Fine, never mind. Websites of ministries, WHO, census. Yes, good. But I think, yeah, I think you have lack of information here. I will show you a website where the government data is available for research, which is open access, license free. You can use them as a part of secondary research, not necessarily as a primary research. I will show you that in the next slide. Okay. And also commercial database. Has anyone heard of any commercial database that you know? What do you mean by commercial database, first of all? Do you know? Anybody wants to answer? Please answer. You can unmute your mic and answer. I don't know whether that option is given to you, that privilege is given to you or not. I'm just
We're
assuming.
on a Zoom webinar mode, so we'll only have chat interactions.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, now I know. So therefore, you can just type in your message. I know there are 140 people and it's difficult if they are unmute and then you can't mute them back. Yes. Kaggle. Okay, fine. Anyway, never mind. There are commercial websites. I'm going to show you in the next slide. And also, these days, with the advent of the AI, we also collect data from something called web scraping. Okay, we are going to learn that. So, primarily, I guess you must have understood now within the primary research and the secondary research, what are the different tools that you can use to collect data. Okay, and the techniques that you can use. Fine. Now, moving forward, this is where you can check, you can check data.government.in, which is free, and you will find any subject, lots of data here. And I'll just show you quickly. For example, Control C, data.government.in. I'm just going here. I'll just try to, sorry. Yeah, I'm just taking this tab here. Oh, yeah. And just a minute. I'll just keep it here so that it's easy. Yeah, just delete this. I'm sorry. Data.government.in is another place where you get all free data available for secondary research. This is where you are supposed to go. Okay, here you go home. For example, you see high value data sets, events, see the sectors you can choose, groups, central government, state government data, APIs, all data sets, all health and family if you are researching on, or youth and sports, judiciary, biotech, water and sanitation, water resource, urban, and many more. Engagement through data. This website is from the government of India and exclusive data collection, collection of data which can be used. You can see month-wise details of LPG consumptions in the country, or you are doing some research or project, this is the best place to go in. Okay. And further, you can see data government states. Also, we have individual state-wise websites, kerala.data.gov, karnataka. Explore all this. Now, I don't have time to show you all of this, but I'm sure if you explore, this is the database we always use. Okay, fine. Then moving ahead, you explore the second one as well. Okay. Control C. I'm coming here. Ministry of Education again here. This is called Diksha portal. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. You want to know, suppose you are doing a research, you want to know number of teachers in Karnataka or in India. What is the female to male ratio of data? Number of students enrolled for 10th standard board exam. You want to know, where do you go? Schooleducation.org is the website. And Diksha, and then MHRD's, Shagun Online Junction is where you need to go to collect all your sample size and then your population, okay, to do your secondary research. So you can see your girls, boys, female, male, everything in terms of lakhs. It depends on what you are looking at. Look at this gross enrollment ratio, dropout rate. If you want to do research on this, and transition rates, and how many of our Indians are in the master's program or in higher education or in school education or dropouts in school, primary school, you can see it's all about the toilet, the data. And you can see your schools with toilet, without toilet, single, thatched hut, pakka building, kacha building, all of these data are available here. Only thing is researchers are unfortunately not knowing about these and how to use these data for their research. So please explore. Maybe I feel, if you really want to know how to use this, maybe you should invite me for one more class. This is not enough, but I'm just showing you the glimpse of it. Okay, fine. So moving ahead, I don't know, you have explored this. WorldCat, have you heard of WorldCat? Anyway, I'm just taking you to that. Online, it's an online collection of library, and the libraries in the world, be it any library in the world, it's all connected on this platform. And if you are looking for some particular, history of US, India, some particular event which you don't find anywhere, you just go to OCLC and type your search, search OCLC websites. Here you can see search term, and this is the place where the whole world's library is connected. And you just search here, it will tell you it is in the Harvard University library, and rack number 4, shelf number 13. Go look at this book or look at this information. That specific it is. So OCLC is a platform where, suppose you are looking for some information of secondary research and you don't find it in India or anywhere on anything, right from 14th century till now, you want to search anything, go here, and then that will tell you. Maybe later on again, you should explore. Sometimes you may find the document straight onto you. If not, you need to make connections and chat with the librarian. And I found this on the WorldCat, this information is available in your library, could you please send it across, and they will do it for you. Okay, so this is basically to share the information or the knowledge across the world on a common platform called OCLC Worldwide Library. Okay, so I'm just giving you this so that you can explore later. So these are some of the secondary data resources I'm showing you because my topic was on research methods, tools, and technique, right? Then I don't know, you have heard of private people, private companies participating in, storing data and then disseminating it across the world. One such data, I'm just showing you one, there are several like that. Bloomberg.com. Okay. Bloomberg is again, it may be paid sometime, paid one, but then yet, sometimes if your projects are being paid by UNESCO, ICSSR, and etc., right, you may take the project. So then you can always pay and subscribe to this Bloomberg, and then that will give you the data. See, Bloomberg, where data, people, and ideas of interest emerge. Okay, explore this site as well for your secondary data. And yeah, if you want to visit Christ University, we do have Bloomberg Lab at the R&D Research and Development blog that we have recently inaugurated. You're welcome to utilize those with the permissions. I don't know how the permission works, but you can explore always. So I think these are some of the online secondary data resources that I showed you to do your research, and you will get the data. I'm telling you, you will not get any more sophisticated data anywhere in the world. Well, any question at this point of time so far before I move forward? Okay, chat. I'll check. Share your presentation. Yeah. This knowledge is for sharing. I believe in that. Don't worry, I'll share the presentation. Yeah. Any questions you have? Fine, I'll move ahead. And maybe I'll take the questions at the end. Fine. Yeah. This is just I have taken the screenshot and trying to show you in case if my internet gets into a problem, then good that you saw all of them live there. Yeah, all this is this is just an explanation here. Over 27,000 member libraries on this OCLC, nearly 40 million bibliographic records in WorldCat available, and you need to just choose what research from which data you want to do. Okay, data is just available. If people are telling, I have no time for data collection, you should laugh at them. That much only I can say. Fine. So moving forward, there is web scraping. AI has come now to fetch you data, and I'm not going into the details of it, but then what it basically does is there are so many web scraping companies and online platforms where you want a particular data, and the websites which are using HTML formatting websites, those data will be captured and then will be given to you in an organized manner. Like you wanted to do research based on the tweets that the people make on Twitter, or the Facebook likes, or on the LinkedIn, what kind of web pages or what kind of posters they put, why do they put, what is their mental health, etc. You wanted to research, definitely web scraping tool will be helpful for you. And this is again in connection with the secondary research data that you wanted to use. Okay, fine. My screen is visible? Yeah, thank you. Fine, moving ahead, having understood primary and secondary data, I first talked about the secondary resources because people have less knowledge about it. All they know is review of literature, and where they search is Google Scholar and ResearchGate, right? So therefore, I showed you some data resources where you can really go find data what you want and how you want, and sometimes you browse, understand the data, and formulate your research questions or research proposal or project proposal based on the availability of the data. Okay, don't just blindly make the proposal and then search for data and data is not available. It is available. Only thing is you need some browsing skills and some knowledge of where it is available. Without that, it is everybody face it as a tough point. Fine. Moving ahead now. primary research types I'm talking about, and these are some of the research, very common research types I have put up. Like you have correlational research, you have quasi-experimental research, you have experimental research, you have survey research, and you have descriptive research. Okay, these are very quite common. There are also more than this. Being a mixed method practitioner, you have quali sequential methods or quali quant exploratory methods and so on. But I'm not going to talk about all of this. It's already 6:40 now. Yeah, I need to cover up some of the things which I'm supposed to. Fine. So these are basic and common quantitative research, primary research that people does. Okay. So let's look at a few of them within the availability of time. This is one method people can use, but rarely people use. But it is a scientific method which is used, but then not, I see not this part of global south is used to it, or not they doing it. That's called Delphi method, where I'm not going into the details of it, but then it is like you collect your data surveying a panel of experts, and experts responses are refined, and then you can come out with the policy frameworks, or any kind of characteristics you wanted to come up with, and so on. So there is a method called Delphi method. You can always explore that for quantitative research, other than the common things that we have. So I put something which is uncommon. Then, of course, I'm sure you are all familiar with the experimental research design. And also, I think I saw some of your courses are on the management and the business commerce, and also sciences. Then, therefore, I have a mix of all of these here, and also social science and psychology and social work. So you have these many types of experimental research design: pre-experimental design, and then true experimental designs, quasi-experimental design. Quasi, we use the word like which is not true or not pure research, experimental research, then it becomes quasi. And then also there are statistical methods. Okay. So in pre-experimental method, you will find something called one-shot case study. You pick up a case, you pick up an institution, study about the characteristics of that, all that. Then single group pre-test, post-test design, okay, is also possible. You wanted to study and understand maybe any social or psychological variables on a particular tribal group or anything, and you have a group and you do a pre-test and then maybe an intervention and then the post-test, and you wanted to check resilience or any other variable. It's possible to do that. And there is also something called static group, which is the group is not changing, the group is fixed, but then you measure some of the parameters on that group. However, true experimental designs are like you have a control group and an experimental group, and you do pre-test, post-test for both, both for control as well as for experimental. But there is also another design called post-test only control group design. Okay, like you conduct the post-test and you conduct for experimental group, you also conduct for control group, and then you only compare the post-test, no pre-test. Okay, that's another design. Then there is another design called Solomon 4-group design, where you will find 4 different groups treated simultaneously with the different treatments, and then you can do it. Of course, in detail, you can always read up and go check it out. What is Solomon 4-group? How do we do it? I'm just introducing you the term in case you're not aware. I'm not very sure about the audience, like they're UG teachers, PG teachers, or they are also registered participants across India. I don't know exactly, but then I assume you are all faculty members or even students, maybe. Yeah. And quasi-experimental design, and like I told, when it's not true experimental design, when there's no randomization of sampling and so on, you use time series where you measure something at different time intervals, maybe longitudinal. I'm going to talk about longitudinal and cross-sectional designs soon. Then multiple time series design is another type where you can explore how do we do measure different variables at different point of time on a multiple group. And some of the research designs are on based on the statistical technique that we use. For example, you have Latin square, you have randomized blocks, and you have factorial design where multiple factors are involved and so on. Yeah, I'm not going into details of any of these. You please explore, or maybe we can take up during the questions. But these are the common experimental research design people use when it comes to research methods in quantitative technique. Okay. Moving forward, if you take, I just spoke about different experimental designs. Now I'm talking about, I'm sure you must be tracking this. I'm following this diagram. Okay. I completed just now the experimental design and then the quasi here. These two, I'm now moving towards survey research. Okay. So that's what it is now. So in survey design, again, it's called time of data collection. It depends on that. Now we have steady over time and steady at one point in time. When you study over time means you study successively for a few years and wanted to find something, then such studies are called longitudinal studies. But if you are measuring something at one point in time, that is cross-sectional studies. Most of the Indian research and PhD people, even at Christ University, all of us are here, cross-sectional method, because you only have 3 years to complete your PhD, and therefore you collect data one time and then over. You do not have a lavish time of 5 years, 6 years to have to do a longitudinal study where you collect data every year, and maybe at the end of 5 year or 6th year you do your analysis and predict the finding. You do not normally use it for PhD or MPhil or master's thesis. But however, major research projects, or you are interested or you are passionate about studying some tribal group or something, which you have to see every, the event happens every successively every year, and you wanted to really measure those and try to see the effect or what's the outcome of that, then we go for longitudinal studies. Usually major research projects, minor research projects end up in longitudinal studies. So for example, trends in the same population but over time, how a particular group of people evolved or the trends have changed. You study that in detail. Of course, we use several tools, again, their checklist or demographic pro forma or many other questionnaires, inventory, many things you can use, but then you are observing the trend there, right? Then changes in a subpopulation group identified by a common characteristics over time. It's like cohort, only females in that, only males in that, or only people who are aged above 60 years, or only cancer patients, anything you do over a period of time, whether particular medication has reduced their, symptoms of cancer or whatever, then it's a longitudinal study. You need it is a cohort based study. Similarly, panel based study, changes in the same people over time. Then you can observe a set of people and you can look at it, is there any change because of the intervention and because of the whatever changes in the context in which they are placed. Then cross-sectional study, yes, in cross-sectional study we go for attitudes and practices measured, psychometric measurements happens, and then community needs can be checked at one point of time, like you have now, post-pandemic, what happened, instructions moved online all of a sudden. So what's happening with the community? Are they able to adjust with the online instruction or still struggling? Will online instruction remains after post-COVID, etc. were tested? That's all one-time cross-sectional study. And also program evaluation. For example, Government of Karnataka conducted something called Guru Chetana program for high school teachers. I don't know you're aware of or not. Then you can check the program evaluation of that by administering, okay, what was a program meant for, and how do you measure that, and so on. I think there is a Q&A. It blinked. What is the key difference between the cohort and the panel? Yeah, why suck is asking. Yeah, that's a great question. Cohort is more of a group like male, female. It's a bigger group. Okay, it's a longitudinal survey, but panel is maybe a small group, 5 members, 6 members. It's a panel members, or each panel member can be of different characteristics, but you study so closely that whether there is any change in the same person or the same panel over a period of time. So cohort is considerably bigger sample than the panel. I guess I answered your question. Was there any other question? Yeah, no, fine. Fine, thank you. Yes, you can put up your questions always there. Yeah, then you can see there that's how it is now. Cross-sectional, you have group comparisons can be done, or national surveys for program evaluation, like I was telling you about Guru Chetana program. What is the effectiveness of it? Or Sarva Shikshana Abhiyan, what is the effect of that? That's old one, of course. But now, every now and then, with a new educational policy and various programs are being launched, how is it useful for them? National digital literacy mission and so on. You need to just explore, and you can always do that. Okay, moving forward, I'm coming to again correlational design. Here I'm coming to this. I'm talking about correlational design. So I go here. So correlational design, I think previous speaker, I heard him saying something about the correlation, but however, it's a quantitative method, definitely not a qualitative one. And correlation, there are two kinds: explanatory correlation and prediction correlation. Usually explanatory correlation, we talk about all this Pearson correlation, Spearman correlation, Kendall-Taub correlation, whether there exists any relationship between the two variables, and whether the relationship is directly proportional or inversely proportional, or increasing the value of one variable will decrease the value of another variable, or increasing the value of one variable will increase the value of another variable, or there is no correlation at all. All of these are explanatory. It just expresses. And sometimes association tests, like the chi-square test, we use it for explaining the association, followed by correlation and so on. But what is this prediction? Prediction correlation design we use if at all you want to predict something futuristic. Like I don't know, you are aware of these statistical methods, prediction, regression analysis. I don't know you are aware of it or not, but being a statistician, I conduct workshop in quantitative and qualitative research methods. I think soon this month you will find the poster on Christ University website. My workshop is on for SPSS workshop on quantitative data analysis. There I'll be talking about regression analysis and so on. So prediction is all about, which will predict. For example, I'll give you a simple example. Let's say on 21st of December 2023 or 2024, how many, a railway counter in Majestic, if you visit, they will each day they will open 2 counter, or today, okay, 3 counter today for issuing the ticket, 4 counter today, like that. But when it's a Christmas season, people travel, right? So how many counters should I open on 21st to 24th evenings or days in the year? Because how do we know now how many counters, how many people will rush in? Because population of Bangalore keeps increasing. People come and wanted to stay here. How do we know how many counters are needed? They can do a prediction analysis. They take the last 9 years data. So in 2023, we had 5 counters. 2024, we had 6 counters, so on, blah, blah, blah. Then therefore, it'll predict in 2024, December, we need 12 counters. And also they look at the population increase in proportion and so on, right? So that's a prediction analysis. So any market research, any scientific research can also do this, okay? Another simple example I can give is, suppose people, let's say there are senior citizens watching TV, eating popcorn. And what happens because of that? Every day they're watching TV, eating popcorn. While they watch TV, their cholesterol concentration is increasing. Now, if I ask the researcher, is their cholesterol concentration increasing because of only watching TV? is cholesterol concentration predicted by the time you watch TV? You want to find out? Then we use regression analysis. And you will find that only 2% of cholesterol concentration is because of people watching TV while they eat popcorn, and not really the junk food they eat or oily food they eat. All other factors are not considered in this research, but you only measured time versus amount of time they watch TV versus maybe you measured the quantity of cholesterol concentration that the person has, right? So in all such cases, we go for prediction analysis. So that's nothing but regression analysis. So it's the extension of correlation. So that is how correlational design will look at, is there any relationship between two variables? If so, what kind of relationship? Positive, negative, no correlation? Or is it a prediction? Well, whether independent variable can predict a dependent variable, then that's a prediction analysis. So yeah, I think I just explained this. I don't know how much of it you understood, but then that's how it is looked at. Okay, moving forward, time series design, which I quickly mentioned, both are quasi-experimental design in which, a series of observations before a treatment or event and a series of observation after the treatment we make. That's why it's a time series design. And multiple time series designs refers to the use of more than one set that we are collected over time, and as an accident rates over time in several states or cities, for example, so that comparison can be made across the cities. Okay, multiple time series, and you compare 2023 how many accidents, 22 how many, 21 how many, etc. Fine, I'm not going into the details of it. And then, yes, online polling is another technique that we use. For example, I think SurveyMonkey, I don't know you use it, but it's paid. But there is also a free version to certain level you can use. Therefore, I'll just show you that, which I don't know if you're, so you can see here, create a poll in 3 simple steps. Create your first poll for free. You can collect data here. People in the world will participate, ask up to 10 questions for free, email or post your poll anywhere online. So that is SurveyMonkey tool. Okay. Use an online poll maker to get fast feedback or responses, and then you can analyze this data. Okay. How to create an online poll, etc. I'm not doing it now. I do not have any time for that, but this is a good tool you can use. And also, I'm just showing you one tool. There are several such tools. Okay, so going backward to this one, I touched all of these now. The last one is descriptive research. Suppose you have picked only one variable. Let's say you administered a questionnaire of professional ethics to all your teacher students, or all your institutional teachers, or teachers across the world, anybody, anywhere, any place, any institute. And if it's only one variable and only one tool you administer, all you can say is how much of professional ethics they possess, to what extent they possess, like maybe 80% of them have good professional ethics, excellent professional ethics, or almost 90% of them do not have any professional ethics. These kinds of percentage analyses, or you just find mean, median, mode, or quartile deviation, or descriptive analysis, or yeah, just describing the data, then that's a descriptive research. So usually people, fresh master's program students come to me with only one variable. Come on, you are only doing then descriptive research, which is not allowed at Christ University. We want you to do beyond that, more than that. Therefore, minimum pick 2 tools. Then you come. Then we will see some correlation or some t-test differences, or ANOVA, MANOVA, many other things. Okay. So hope you got it. What is descriptive research? Is just describing the data with maybe one variable, or by administering one tool. So I calculated my time for 1 hour exactly. That's why I showed up on the screen at 6 o'clock, and it's 7 o'clock now, 2 minutes left. I leave it to you for questioning, and I close it here. Thank you very much for your patient listening, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, sir, for the well-structured and informative session. And I think there's just one question in the chat, which is
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for this question, Maninder. What is the difference between panel and pool data? Yes, obviously, pool data is, you pull out the data, that's it. If it's a poll data, that's different. You collect it from a poll. You may use menti.com to collect your poll, or you can use any online software to collect your polls. Like even in Big Boss, the graphs are showed there, right? The poll, the audience poll, right? That's the data. Okay. But whereas panel data is, I already told you, it is coming from the panel. Even Delphi method use panel data. Yes, any other question? Yes, thank you, Kaval Preet. Yeah, she's saying informative session. Thank you. If you are happy, I'm happy.
thank you, sir, for the wonderful session. And with that, we come to the end of the third day of our faculty development program. And we believe that as educators, we are all lifelong learners, and each of us have different expertise. And it is in our ability to learn from each other that we excel and grow as leaders. So thank you for your time. And we would like to thank all our participants. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I quit here.